that's where the medical industry started to derail at the same time that our money system started to get really shitty.
The Federal Reserve was created in 1913. The American Medical Association was created in 1903. But what they actually did was to attack, criminalize anything that is not based on pharmaceutical-based medicine.
Misinformation, the skewed studies, the profit motives.
The fundamental issue is that whatever you're doing is not helping people get better. So that's why the system is so overworked. That's why the system is so overburdened.
So what are your thoughts on cholesterol? Is that something that we should be concerned about?
The entire fight against cholesterol and animal fat has been propagated so much because it was driven by two industries.
And so what is it about the color spectrums and the synthetic lights that's causing us such problems?
Blue light in isolation on its own is toxic to the cell. The way it works is...
You're Saifedean's brother.
Yes, sir.
So you are a Bitcoiner, I would assume.
Yes.
The discovery of Bitcoin, how does it affect the medical industry and the corruption that we've seen?
So let's go down that rabbit hole then.
Yes. All right, Dr. Ammous. So pumped to have you here. I was listening to one of your podcast appearances last night and this morning, and I really like your perspective on health, wellness, life, fiat. So I'm pumped to have this conversation.
Thank you, Eric. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, and so how did you become a doctor?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ramallah in Palestine, the West Bank. My dad was a physician. He was kind of like my role model. I just saw how he helped people. I've always kind of wanted to live up to him, live up to his role model. And it's kind of like everything I've always known was being a doctor. And I've always good with science, so I decided to just go for it.
And we were talking before we started recording, your father was encouraging you not to become a doctor.
Yeah, my father put a lot of effort encouraging my brother to be a doctor, so my brother didn't want to. He didn't put any effort into encouraging me, and I ended up being a doctor.
That's interesting.
So it's a good lesson for raising kids. If you kind of want them to go a certain path, don't push them too hard down that path. And actually, my dad kind of discouraged me from doing medicine, but I was stubborn and I still did it.
Yeah, and so you went to medical school where?
Yeah, so I came to the US for undergrad. I did my pre-med here, and then I did my medical school in Lebanon.
And you did residency here in the States?
I came to do my residency in the US, yes.
And where was that here in the States?
That was in New York.
And how old were you?
I came for residency when I was 26.
26. And while you were doing your residency, was that when you started to have some aha moments and realize that the pharmaceutical industry and the whole medical industrial complex was flawed in some ways?
No, it was a lot earlier than that. It started actually when I first started medical school. What happens in medical school is that they kind of want you to see how disease looks in a patient. So they get you like standardized patients, people that actually have the disease, so that you see how it looks on them, ask them questions, etc. And so they would bring us, like, say, a rheumatoid arthritis patient. Rheumatoid arthritis is a inflammatory condition that causes damage to the joints. And so you have very deformed joints. And they would bring us these patients that have been on treatment for this condition for like 15 years.
When you say treatment, taking pills.
Pills, of course. So they're taking the pills, they're doing the lab work as their doctor is saying, and yet they bring this patient and you can see that their joints are very deformed. I was like, what's the point of this? If they're on the treatment, shouldn't the condition not be there anymore? And I would ask the patients, so you've been on those drugs for a lot of years. How much improvement did you get on them? And they would tell me, we've gotten like a 30% improvement. And that was kind of depressing for me because I've worked so hard to get to medical school. I had to do an undergraduate bachelor's degree. And now I'm in medical school and I have maybe a lot of years still ahead of me. And all of this just to help people get better by 30%. And so it was pretty depressing for me at that point.
Yeah. And are you taught in medical school that somebody, for example, that has rheumatoid arthritis, that it's a genetic predisposition, right? It has nothing to do with their diet or lifestyle. It's just their genetics and they need these medications?
Yeah, they either say it's genetics or they say it's idiopathic. Idiopathic means it has no cause.
Interesting.
Yes.
And what about nutrition? How much do they teach you about nutrition and diet?
Yeah, I had one lecture in my entire 4 years of medical school. It was a 40-minute lecture. It was by a dietitian, and they just taught us how to dose insulin based on how much carbohydrates people eat.
That is wild. And so you're working with these patients, you're realizing that the medication that they're being prescribed isn't solving their issues. That was probably pretty disheartening. What happened next that helped send you down this path?
Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty depressing at that point, seeing all these people that are not being helped by pills. I was lucky at that point that my brother told me about the paleo diet. He was experimenting with his diet. He was going low carb. He cut out processed foods. He cut out sugar. And so I said, I'll give it a shot. And it was life-changing, to say the least. The levels of energy that I got, I never thought I had those levels of energy in me. I was happier. I had more energy to exercise. I had such a positive outlook on life. I always kind of struggled with some anxiety and depression, but those completely went away just by some small dietary changes.
What do you think that is? Because I think a lot of people are struggling with anxiety and depression. I mean, I've had flavors of that on and off throughout the years. How does diet exacerbate those issues?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not just diet on its own. You know, your environment matters. If you're in a toxic relationship, if you're in a not so friendly household, that is a problem. But also a lot of it is the food that you eat. Inflammatory vegetable seed oils, for example, they raise the levels of inflammation in your body. And if you are getting inflammation in your gut, it translates into inflammation in your brain. And that can cause you to get anxiety and depression. If you're constantly on a roller coaster of sugar high and low because you're drinking soda and eating, candy, those lows are going to give you anxiety and depression, So diet is very important with that.
And were you partying and drinking in medical school? A lot of people do, right?
My friends did a lot. I was lucky in that I discovered this early in medical school, that I kind of went, while people were trying to understand the body, how the textbook taught it to them, I was trying to understand my body just from my own experience. So I kind of isolated myself from my classmates at that point, and I was just experimenting with things, different dietary changes, different workout routines, different breathing exercises, all these things. And it was interesting. It was kind of like a medical degree learning from the books and a medical degree from learning from my own body.
Yeah, and your brother suggested to you the paleo diet. Mm-hmm. And he's older than you by how much?
He's 11 years older.
11 years older. And when you first made your dietary shift and you stopped eating the carbs and sugars and standard American stuff, did you go full carnivore, or was there still fruit and other things involved?
I was more of a paleo diet, which was, just cutting out sugar and bread and most processed carbohydrates. And, you feel great for the first few months, but then the initial high kind of wears off a little bit. So I kept experimenting, and I eventually cut down a lot of the vegetables and fruits until I became full carnivore. I was full carnivore for 2 years. The first 6 months felt incredible. I felt amazing. I was improving every day.
Only beef?
Only beef, maybe some lamb and salt, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And water. I did that for 6 months. For 2 years. The first 6 months were nice. Then I started running into issues. I was low energy. I was losing a lot of weight. I had no ability to exercise. I would sleep like 10 hours a night and still wake up not refreshed. And this is something some of your listeners should be wary of, but just like the vegan diet, there's a sort of like a cult around it. There is a bit of a cult around the carnivore diet, and I was part of that cult. So I didn't want to admit to myself that this diet might not be working for me. And I tried to fight it for the longest time. But eventually I tried some fruit. It happened to be in front of me, and I felt immediately better.
Really? And your brother, is he still on a
He's still on it.
Carnivore diet?
He's still on it. Maybe it works for some people. I know it doesn't work for me. So
yeah. Did you ever try the vegan thing? No, I did. I did that for 6 months. And I was living in Humboldt County, Northern California, in the Redwood Forest. It's cold all year long, 55, 65 degrees. Not really cold, but kind of chilly. Wearing a hoodie basically all year long. I got pretty skinny and cold, and I felt really good for the first couple of weeks. But I quickly figured out that wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah, I've read enough about the vegan diet to know that it's really, really bad for you.
And why is that? Low cholesterol issues, or what are the main issues or concerns around a vegan diet?
Yeah, so the best way to look at this is to look at the work of Weston Price. Weston Price was a Canadian dentist who, in the early 1900s, traveled the world looking at societies who haven't been touched by industrialization. Back then, in the early 1900s, there were people talking about how vegan, vegetarian is the ultimate healthy thing. And he actually went to these cultures to kind of prove these findings, to prove that theory. And what he discovered was actually shocking. So he traveled all over the world, Europe, South America, Asia, and looked for indigenous societies. And he saw that all of them, without exception, the staple of their diet was some sort of animal protein and fat. No exception. That was what they cherished the most, and everything else was just a complementary on the side to that. So I trust that sort of evidence more than anything that Harvard labs or Harvard studies show, because this is what actual people have been eating for thousands of years. And it makes sense. We've kind of evolved this brain capacity because we were able to shift a lot of our blood supply and our energy from our gut to our brains. We rely on other animals to digest plants for us, and we get it in a concentrated form in the form of animal food. And so that's why meat and fat taste good to us and are good for us.
Yeah, so when I think about this through my farming background, I think, you have all these minerals in the soil, and you have this soil ecology that's decomposing inorganic material and organic material that's at the forest floor, making it bioavailable to the plants. The plants are nutritionally dense, but I've started to think about it through the lens of we don't have the proper digestive system to break down the cellulose and access all those nutrients. So although you can take a sprig of kale or some vegetable or whatever and test it, and it'll show all these nutrients in it, they're not as bioavailable as they are in meat. Is that a proper way to think about it?
Yeah, so a lot of, if you look at kale, it has a lot of potassium or a lot of magnesium, but they come in an inorganic form, which means we don't absorb it very well. We are unable to take full advantage of it. Versus if you get it in meat, it comes in an organic form that we are able to take advantage of. So that's with regards to minerals. With regards to proteins, the amino acid profile of plants, they say beans are high in protein.
Or quinoa.
Quinoa is high in protein. Mm-hmm. The problem with that, the amino acid profile is different than the amino acid profile of your body. That your body requires. Your amino acid profile is similar to that of an animal. Okay, so you can kind of offset that by combining sources. So traditional cultures used to eat rice and beans because kind of the amino acids that are missing in beans, you can find them in rice and the other way around. The problem is in order to get enough protein for you to sustain a healthy body and a healthy mind, you need to eat a lot of plant protein to get that. And so that's one of the issues with the vegan vegetarian diet. And then also cholesterol, an essential nutrient that you need for your brain, for your cell membranes, is only found in animal foods. So you don't do well if you're not eating animal foods.
And the cholesterol thing, you got all these cholesterol reducing drugs. That seems to be a huge issue. And then, there are people, and it's my understanding that Ozempic affects your cholesterol, and that then can cause cognitive issues. And I have heard several people, and I have a buddy in London who just had his blood work done. And all of his markers are really good, but the doctor was like, hey, your cholesterol is through the roof. And he's like, that's the way I want it. So what are your thoughts on cholesterol? Is that something that we should be concerned about? What happens if you have low cholesterol?
Yeah, so cholesterol is one of the biggest scams in medicine. Cholesterol, the entire fight against cholesterol and animal fat has been propagated so much because it was driven by two industries. First, the processed food industry trying to push on us vegetable seed oils and processed carbohydrates, and the pharmaceutical drug industry trying to push statins. So there was this researcher by the name of Ancel Keys. In the 1950s, there was an increasing rate of heart disease all over the US. So all the best researchers went to try and figure out why.
Was that when seed oils started to become popular?
Correct. Ancel Keys did this study called the 7-country study, where he linked the rate of saturated fat intake and risk of heart disease for 7 countries. And so that the higher the rate of the heart disease, the higher the saturated fat intake is. These were preliminary studies results from that study, but the processed food industry jumped on these studies along with the American Heart Association, and they started recommending low animal fat diet. Why? Because if you're not eating butter, animal fat, and full fat dairy, what other fats are they recommending? They're recommending processed vegetable seed oils, which have a very, very high profit margin.
Yeah, and those are partially hydrogenized. Is that correct?
So they are what we call polyunsaturated, which means they have a lot of double bonds in their structure. Having a lot of double bonds means that you're at a higher risk of getting oxidized. Okay, so let's go down that rabbit hole then.
Yes.
So think about plants. Plants' purpose in life, just like us, is to propagate, to have progeny. Okay, it's not going to put nutrients in the seed for your own consumption. It's going to put it for the consumption of its progeny. It could surround the seed by a fruit for you to eat so that you're able to poop that seed somewhere else and help it propagate. Same with animals, etc. So the seed contains some fats that are meant to be there so that when the seed is able to generate a plant, it can use those fats. They're not meant for us to consume them.
Yeah, they probably have defense mechanisms to prevent animals from eating them specifically, right? Mm-hmm. You want to move the seed around so that the plant can, grow in a different area or whatever. It can proliferate and go on. But I would imagine that nature has evolved to protect the seeds from being consumed, because if you chew up the seeds and eat them, then plants can't grow from them. Yeah. Exactly.
The only way to get these nutrients out of the seed is to heat that seed to very high temperatures. And so this is what they do with soy oil. This is what they do with corn oil, with cottonseed oil. When you do that, these oils that are in these seeds are actually not stable at high heat. So they tend to get oxidized. So when they go into your body, you're actually eating rancid oils that are oxidized.
And is your body absorbing it, thinking it's animal fats?
Correct.
And it's going to all the places that the animal fats would naturally go.
And most importantly, it's going into your cell membranes, and it's replacing the fats in your cell membranes. So that makes your own cell membranes less stable. And that's the issue with vegetable seed oils.
And is that causing autoimmune issues? And then people get arthritis and skin cancer issues. I mean, it seems like the seed oil rabbit hole is borderline endless.
Yes, it can cause any of these diseases. You are basically, the most important function of the cell membrane is that it maintains the electricity of the cell. And it's kind of like having a leaky membrane now, that you're unable to protect the electricity of the cell. And our cells rely on electricity to communicate together, to maintain their energy. So this is what seed oils are fundamentally doing.
And so you change your diet. You start, you're a little you're concerned or not so happy with what you're witnessing with your path as a doctor and what you're learning. At what point did you discover the seed oil stuff? Was that pretty quickly into that journey?
That was pretty quickly. I mean, because when you switch to like a paleo diet, you're naturally eating more animal fat. And that was when I was feeling better eating more fat and more animal fat. But even though in medical school they were teaching me, I mean, the only thing they teach you is low fat diet and that cholesterol is bad for you.
Well, you can put no fat on a 1 pound bag of sugar and it's factually correct, but you eat that sugar and you're going to get fat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they've kind of used the word fat well, because people associate fat with being fat, but that's not how it works. There are right fats for you and there are wrong fats for you.
Yeah. And so when was this that you figured out that the seed oil thing was a problem? Because that's become a trend now over the last couple of years. I've seen a lot of people speaking to that on Twitter and it's becoming a popular topic. It seems like you were ahead of the curve.
I mean, that was my first year of medical school, which was in 2013.
Wow. Okay. And what was your next aha moment?
Yeah. Let me go back to the cholesterol one because that's important.
Definitely.
Yeah. So driven by the vegetable seed oils, they used this 7-country study by Ansel Keys to tell people that you shouldn't be eating animal fat and instead eat processed vegetable seed oils. And later, Ansel Keys, they analyzed the results of his studies and they saw that he actually omitted countries that don't fit his model. So the entire scam was built on a faulty study.
Who paid for this study? Do you know?
Processed food industry.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then in the 1970s, they discover a fungal toxin that lowers cholesterol in the blood. They use that to generate statins. Statins then go on to become the highest selling drug in history.
And so they're synthetic versions of a chemical that the fungus creates, or do they manufacture these statins with fungus?
No, it's a synthetic version of this this fungal toxin that they discovered.
And what do the statins do?
So the statins, they lower your cholesterol levels, okay? They do that by blocking a very important pathway in the body called the melavonate pathway. The problem is that when you block this pathway, not only are you decreasing the levels of cholesterol, but you're also blocking the synthesis of a lot of very important compounds in the body, and it affects your ability of the body to generate energy. So that's how also fundamentally toxic statins are. The pharmaceutical industry used also the faulty study by Ansel Keys. And there's also another study, the Framingham study, which also eventually they found out that the results were misleading. They used these studies to push that high cholesterol is the reason why we get heart disease. And the treatment is this pill.
Oh my gosh, that's got to make so if you're eating the seed oils because you're trying to avoid the cholesterol and you're taking the statins, that seems like a double dose of bad.
And the statins were the first drug in history to be prescribed based on a blood test, not based on symptoms, not based on if you had any other medical conditions.
So are doctors that are prescribing these statins, are they saying that you're going to need to be on this statin for the rest of your life, or you need to be on this statin if you want to eat saturated fats?
You're going to have to be on it for the rest of your life. And even if
regardless of dietary shifts.
We don't even consider dietary shifts.
Right. Yeah. Gosh.
And even if your cholesterol gets back to normal, they don't take you off the medication. They say back to normal, quote unquote, in their reference values. They don't take you off it. They say you need to be on it because it's working now.
And so cholesterol, healthy cholesterol, has an impact on your cognitive function, your ability to regulate hormones, produce testosterone. Is that all correct?
Yeah, so you synthesize all your hormones from your body using cholesterol. Your brain relies on cholesterol in order to make synapses, in order for your neurons to communicate. So it's one of the most important fats in the body. And those statins are affecting that, and they're affecting the ability of the cell to generate energy.
And does Ozempic, do you know how Ozempic works?
Ozempic works on different peptides that affect satiety. I don't know if it relates to cholesterol, to be honest.
Okay. So people probably taking Ozempic are also looking to eat fat-free diets, I would assume as well. And so that could be the issue.
Yeah.
Because I have heard that there's people in the Bitcoin space, one guy specifically that started taking Ozempic allegedly and has lost the plot and become a shitcoiner. And so everybody's like, oh, his brain's not working right because of the Ozempic.
That's how they're trying to get us then, through the Ozempic.
Through the Ozempic.
Okay, yeah. Noted.
Yeah.
iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer, so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. If you're anything like me, you understand that Bitcoin is something we can use every day to connect, to collaborate, and to build stronger, freer communities. As true Bitcoiners, you all know we are each responsible for onboarding more Bitcoiners. That's why I chose to partner with Cowbolt, an expense-splitting app that settles in Bitcoin. It can be as simple as splitting a dinner bill. Your friend covers dinner and you reimburse them, but you send it back to him in Bitcoin. Now your friend has their first sats, and as I always say, where your money goes, the mind follows. By using Cowbolt to get Bitcoin into the hands of your friends and family, you can help us orange pill the world. Cowbolt is built to let you split costs, share expenses, and settle instantly, while always keeping full control of your keys. Cowbolt is simple, social, non-custodial, exactly how Bitcoin was meant to be used. If you're serious about Bitcoin, it's time to act like it. Download Cowbolt today on iOS or Android. To learn more, go to cowbolt.com. Again, that's Cowbolt, COWBOLT.com.
And so, okay, and what comes next in your journey to find the truth?
Yeah, so at that time, the diet was the first thing. I became, just because of being healthier, I became more connected to my body. I became sort of more connected to nature, got into meditation, hiking a lot, did some breath work. And then, I thought that I reached the max, but then I discovered all the light stuff. And that's been a journey on its own.
Yeah, so tell me about that, because I wear blue light blocking glasses when I watch YouTube at nighttime, which is one of my favorite things to do. I try to dim my screen. I'm literally on the market to find a TV that has a more dimmable screen than the one that I have. I have my phone set to triple click and go all red at nighttime. If I put it back to the full color spectrum and I'm looking at it after not having been exposed to the bright lights, it is painful. I can feel the strain on my eyes. And so what is it about the color spectrums and the synthetic lights that we're exposed to that's causing us such problems?
Yeah. So
and what are those problems?
Yeah. So let's start by defining what blue light is. So blue light is a spectrum, a color in the visible spectrum, which means that the light that we see, we have different colors, have different wavelengths. Blue light has the shortest wavelength and so the highest energy in the visible spectrum. the source of all light in nature is the sun. In nature, blue light does not exist in isolation. It's always paired with either red, infrared, and UV light.
And infrared we can't see. It's just heat, basically.
Yes. Red light you can see. That's why the sunrise in the morning is red. And UV light, you can't see it, but you can feel it.
That's going to be like deep red and far red. And then as you go further on the color spectrum, then you're going to have infrared. And so you're getting all those reds. Because as a cannabis farmer, I was familiar with different light spectrums. In the beginning of the cycle, I would want a spectrum that had more blue relative to the red to keep the internodal spacing on the plant shorter, kind of emulating that grow season where in the springtime you have longer days and there's more blue spectrum in the sunlight than there is in the autumn when you have shorter days and it's starting to be more red dominant in that color spectrum.
So because blue light doesn't exist in isolation in nature, your body is only used to handling it when it also has red light with it, okay? Blue light in isolation on its own is toxic to the cell. The way it works is your mitochondria are tiny organelles in your cell that generate energy. They are what we call like the power plant of the cell. Mitochondria generate energy using electron currents in certain proteins called cytochromes. These cytochromes, pretty incredibly, are light sensitive. And they are sensitive to specific frequencies of light. So red light is good for them, makes them run more efficiently. Blue light is not good for them when it is isolated from LED light.
So wearing blue light blocking glasses at nighttime, but being exposed to the skin by artificial light still has a negative impact.
Yes, not ideal.
Not ideal.
But the main reason you wear blue blocking glasses at night is the effect of blue light on your circadian rhythm. So blue light only exists comes from the sun in nature. So when your body senses blue light at night, it thinks that it's noon or something. So that's why if say sunset happens and then you turn the lights on, that messes your circadian rhythm where all of a sudden your body thinks it's noon again.
Yeah. So when I was growing cannabis, which I did for 17 years, I always had indoor facilities as well as outdoor grows. In the indoor facilities, because the lights produce so much heat, the lights and the dehumidifiers to keep the proper climate produce so much heat, you're better off to have a cheaper electrical bill to run your lights at nighttime. So for several years of my life, at 8 or 9 p.m., my lights would come on in a grow facility and I would go into the grow facility and work. And after several years of that, I started to become aware that like, wait a second, this is tricking my physiology into thinking it's daytime and my sleep is absolutely wrecked. So I finally just came to the conclusion that I'm just going to pay a much higher electrical bill and have my lights come on at 4 or 5 in the morning and go off at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So then I could wake up with the sun and go in and work with the plants as opposed to doing that at nighttime. And so I currently at my house, because I've become so sensitive to the light, like when my wife and I first met, actually, I remember she came into the house and she's like, we got to change all these bulbs. I'm like, we just met, babe. What do you mean I got to change all these bulbs, right? But since then, I swapped all the bulbs out for 21 Kelvin or 2000 Kelvin, very warm lights. They're much dimmer. And then at nighttime now, we have fixtures throughout the house that have red LEDs, and we turn on all of those so that we have very little, if not no blue light in the house. And I sleep better. I'm less I feel with the better sleep and having a better circadian rhythm, I'm less foggy and sluggish throughout the day.
If you're exposed to blue light after sunset, it messes with your melatonin synthesis. And you don't get that melatonin rise that you want because naturally it starts at the moment that the sun sets and you gradually build up the melatonin until that when you get to bed, you're completely ready for bed. Well, the way we do it nowadays is we're exposed to artificial light until we go to bed, and then the melatonin synthesis starts. So that's why we have difficulty getting to bed.
Or going into deeper stages of sleep, right? Because I feel like I was clearly able to fall asleep, but I don't think I was actually getting good sleep. I think I was like passing out because I was so physically exhausted. But I don't think I was getting into those deeper levels of sleep. I wasn't fully recuperating. And it was years of my life like that.
Yeah, and the reason the glasses work is the most sensitive signal to your melatonin synthesis is the eyes. So if you still have to be exposed to artificial light at night, at least wear the glasses because that still helps.
And what about fireplaces or looking at flames? Like I would imagine people evolved for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years sitting next to campfires and that not having the same negative impact.
Yeah, the blue light there is balanced by red and infrared. So
that makes sense.
It feels a lot more natural to your body. It's not ideal to be, beside it all the time at night. You want to also be in complete darkness. But as a light source, like using candles even, is a lot better than using any artificial light.
And what about the color spectrum of the sun changing throughout the day? Is that morning light very important to get? Is it different than the afternoon sunlight?
Yeah, so the most important sun to see is the morning sun. Ideally, you want to see the sunrise. But if as close to sunrise as possible, that's kind of a minimum. And the reason is so as the sun gets higher in the sky, the percentage of its rays that are red and infrared go down. So there's more UV light during the day. That red and infrared in the morning helps start something called the TCA cycle, which helps start your metabolism. So if you're not getting that red light in the morning, there's no turn on switch for your proper metabolism during the day. It's that powerful.
Interesting. What about red light therapy? People are using LEDs and it's going to be very isolated spectrum. I think it's 660 nanometers is the measurement or the light spectrum coming out of most of the red light therapy lights fixtures that people use.
Yeah, so these are helpful. I mean, there are studies showing that it helps with like muscle recovery, with joint pains. There's even a study showing that it lowers blood sugar. Thing about it though is that it's only one or two spectra in the red spectrum, while the sun gives you all the colors. And so there's no replacement for the sun.
Yeah, that's what sounds. So you've gone down the Jack Kruse rabbit hole.
Yes, I'm a big fan of his work. I've learned a lot from him. So
yeah, he definitely. At times, I'm a little confused by him. I think he said like seed oils are number 8 on the list, but the number 1 is like blue light and you need sunlight. And sometimes I'm not quite sure about that. I've heard him I've heard him say quite literally like what you eat doesn't matter so much as long as you're getting sunlight. And I don't know if that's accurate.
He has to exaggerate because he's the pioneer in that field. That's how you get attention to your field. But light is very important.
And seed oils, how do they affect your ability to tan and not get skin cancer? Because that's something that I've been hearing a lot about.
Yeah, so there's no direct studies looking at like how the sun affects you if you're eating vegetable seed oils or not. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of people saying, I stopped getting sunburn after stopping seed oils. If you look at studies in mice, you see that if they're fed a high seed oil diet, their skin is more likely to oxidize when exposed to UV light. So those studies in mice. In humans, there are studies showing that a higher intake of vegetable seed oil is associated with higher risk of skin cancer.
Yeah, well, then you need medication and sunscreen, and now you're sucked into the matrix even further. Mm-hmm. And what about grounding? Have you gone down that rabbit hole? Like I personally sleep on grounding sheets as opposed to like unplugging my Wi-Fi router. I mean, there's so many rogue EMFs. There's a book, I forget the guy's name, called The Ion Effect, basically talking about all these radio waves and signals and how that they wreak havoc on a system at a cellular level.
Yeah, the way to think about how they affect us is, so at a fundamental level, what is the cell? The cell is this factory that is trying to work against entropy. So entropy is leading us towards disorder. The cell is trying to do the opposite. It's trying to build, trying to make this organism, trying to make it taller, trying to grow beautiful hair on it. How does it do that? It does that by coupling certain reactions to heat. So the the cell itself is producing heat, but so the heat is increasing the entropy outside of it. But inside of it, it's doing useful building reactions. The way it does these reactions, they have to be activated by catalysts or enzymes. Enzymes are very important in the human body. Without enzymes, we won't be able to be alive. All these reactions that happen in our cells will take thousands of years to happen without enzymes. Enzymes make them a lot more efficient, so they happen in milliseconds. These enzymes, the cell itself is surrounded by something we call EZ water, which is the fourth phase of water. It's kind of like plasma, okay? It's not solid or liquid water. Gerald Pollack wrote a book about this, if people are interested. So it's called the fourth phase of water. This water is highly energized, and it's the structure that enzymes require in order to function properly. They need the water to be in that phase. If you're exposing your body to a lot of electromagnetic frequencies or EMFs from devices, from Wi-Fi, from radio, from Bluetooth, that causes this water to lose its energy and go back to being just liquid water. It loses this energized fourth phase of water.
Interesting.
And so that makes all your enzymes a lot less efficient.
And does salinity have an effect on that? I've been putting sea salt in my water, and I was having random headaches from time to time, which is not common for me. And when I started putting sea salt in my water, that went away. And I've heard that it has something to do with osmosis and the ability for the water to get into the cell. Is that incomplete or incorrect?
Yeah, I mean, you need salt. Salt is very important, and salt helps with all these cellular functions.
And not table salt. That's just sodium, right?
Even table salt is good.
Okay.
There are other forms that are better, but any salt is better than no salt.
Okay.
So again, going back, the electromagnetic frequencies ruin this fourth phase of water. And what helps, anything that reconnects you to the rhythm of the earth helps restructure this. So the sun helps restructure this fourth phase of water, and so does grounding.
Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. What if I told you that you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, by mining Bitcoin with Blockware, you can. New guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow American Bitcoin miners to write off 100% of their mining hardware investment in a single year. That's right, a 100% write-off. So if you had $100,000 of income or capital gains, you could write off that entire amount by investing it in Bitcoin mining hardware. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to start mining Bitcoin right now with minimal effort. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost energy to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You can stack Bitcoin at a discount every day and save big when tax season comes. So you can get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove.
What other health tips do we have? So we got seed oils, we need to be careful with blue light, we need to be careful with rogue EMFs. What else do people need to be watching out for in this fiat corrupted world we live in?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the sun. You want to try and get the morning sun as much as you can. You also want to get sun during the day because that includes UV light. UV light is very good for your body, very good for how your cells generate energy, very good for this easy water that we just talked about. You also want to avoid getting sunburned. Okay, getting sunburned is not good for you, and sunscreen is not good for you.
Why is getting sunburned not good for you?
Well, there are studies showing that repetitive episodes of sunburn increase your risk of skin cancer.
Okay.
Okay. There's no studies directly linking sun exposure with the malignant melanoma, which is the dangerous form of skin cancer, but sunburn, yes.
Okay.
And it's kind of like an unhealthy relationship for a lot of people who say live in Northern Europe or in colder parts of the US, where they just take a vacation somewhere tropical and they just get, decimated with the sun.
I did that twice last year.
Yeah, you can do it a little bit more in a healthy way. Like you can ease yourself into it by getting more morning sun at the beginning of the vacation rather than just getting sunburned directly. You also want to avoid sunscreen. The reason you want to avoid sunscreen is sunscreen contains a lot of endocrine disruptors. So these are molecules that work on your own, like say testosterone, thyroid, or estrogen receptors, and they activate them. So this has negative consequences on your hormonal balance and also on potential cancer risk.
Yeah, growing up, I used to wear, nice expensive cologne. I felt privileged to have nice colognes and Axe body spray and all that stuff. And gosh, if I could go back and make any changes in my life, that would be one of them. And now at this point, I don't do scented candles. I don't wear deodorant. I don't wear any fragrances at all. That's a real problem, isn't it?
It is a problem, yes. I mean, we're also exposed to estrogens in the environment a lot through, plastics and soaps, and it's there's a lot to it. It can feel a little bit overwhelming, but again, if you power your body by proper nutrition and proper light, you're able to detoxify a lot of these things a lot better. So you also shouldn't douse yourself in Axe deodorant all day, but managing your metabolism otherwise can give you a little bit more space with these things.
What about, we have a tallow-based zinc sunscreen. Mm-hmm. Is that something to be concerned about or no?
So tallow is excellent. Tallow is very good. You can also use tallow even on its own. It does have some sunscreen properties. Zinc oxide, you want to be careful that it's non-nano based. So the nano zinc oxide is easily absorbed into the body and can also lead to issues with the body, this zinc oxide. They made it into nanoparticles because it gives less of this white appearance on the face and stuff. So that's why they switched to nano. But there are issues with nano sunscreen also. If you have to travel on vacation and you want to be in the sun, then tallow zinc oxide is fine. But for your day-to-day use, what you should be doing is the spring starts, you are going outside in the morning always until you get to the point where you have more melanin in your skin, this sun callus, so that eventually when the summer hits, you're able to spend more of the day outside because you have that tan. And even people with Northern European descent, you are still able to build enough of this melanin in order to spend a lot of time in the sun. Of course, you have to be a little bit aware that, not everyone can spend noon on a beach all the time. You have to be a little bit careful about it.
Yeah, isn't the best sunscreen logic and reason getting out of the sun when you've had too much?
Exactly. Put a hat on, put a shirt on, sit in the shade. It's a lot better than putting on artificial sunscreen. This hit me also when I was in medical school. Medications are the third leading cause of death in the USA. This is medications prescribed as they should be prescribed. So what happens is you put an older patient on a medication, they get dizzy, they fall, they break their hip, and they die. Or you put them on one medication and then you add another one, and they interact with each other and they cause a third problem. So you add a third medication. And then you don't even know how these three medications interact with each other. And somehow they lead to a disease that leads to the patient dying.
It makes me think of the commercials I used to see when I would watch TV growing up, and it's like some fancy drug. Like, do you wake up? Are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you stressed out? Like, you need this pill. And then at the very end, it would be like, could cause suicide, your brain to explode, and like this whole list of potential complications. Like, that's gnarly.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah. And so we were talking earlier, around the time the Federal Reserve was put into effect, there was corruption of some sort in the studies. Or, I forget what was it that happened? Because that seemed that that's where the medical industry started to derail at the same time that our money system started to get really shitty.
Yes. So the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. Okay. The American Medical Association was created in 1903. The purpose of the American Medical Association was to try and standardize the practice of medicine in the US. It sounds good on paper, we want to have things according to rules so that there are no quacks and no snake oil salesmen. So that sounds good on paper. But what they actually did was to attack and criminalize anything that is not based on pharmaceutical-based medicine.
Criminalize?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So in 1910, this guy called Abraham Flexner, who was a high school teacher, was given the authority of writing something called the Flexner Report. And the purpose of the Flexner Report was to recommend how we can improve medical education in the US. He was heavily funded by the then blossoming pharmaceutical industry. And his recommendations was any medical school that teaches non-pharmaceutical based medicine that it doesn't just rely on pharmacology and pills, all of these medical schools need to be shut down. So 60% of US medical schools will shut down at that time.
Wow. And so I don't really know the history of the pharmaceutical industry and these early pharmaceutical companies. Do you know much about that? What prescription drugs were they offering in the early 1900s? How did they become so powerful? And how did this unfold? How did we get here?
We got here so back then, if you wanted to go to a doctor, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be a guy who prescribes a pill for you. Now, a doctor, the definition of a doctor is someone who practices pharmaceutical allopathic medicine. Back then, in the 1800s, you could go to a naturopath who heals with herbs. You could go to a homeopath who heals with homeopathy. You could go to an osteopath that heals with physical manipulation, or a chiropractor, same thing. All these schools of medicine were shut down in the early 1900s, so that only pharmaceutical medicine is the norm. And all these doctors went out of practice, and all these medical schools either shut down or had to change their curricula. And since then, if you get sick, there's only one option for you, which is pills. Doesn't necessarily mean that the pills are bad, but why are you banning all the other schools, modalities of healing that have been practicing for hundreds of thousands of years?
It's pretty sus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's how we get to where we are right now.
Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. Onramp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. Onramp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-sig vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians. none of which that have unilateral control over your assets. More than just security, Onramp simplifies inheritance and estate planning, ensuring your Bitcoin wealth moves seamlessly to your loved ones without the risk and complexities of self-custody. Easily designate beneficiaries right in the Onramp dashboard, eliminating the need for unreliable treasure maps or other complex key-sharing schemes. You can also avoid the probate process and ensure your heirs receive their Bitcoin securely with legal title transfers designed to keep your wealth intact for generations. As Bitcoin continues to appreciate, Onramp helps you seamlessly access financial services, from inheritance and insurance to trading, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security. And importantly, the onboarding process is fast and frictionless. I set up my own Onramp account, and it was far easier than dealing with hardware wallets or traditional self-custody setups. The team walked me through everything step by step, making sure I had a secure, reliant setup for my Bitcoin wealth. Secure your generational wealth with confidence. Schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove.
I've heard that there's connection between the petroleum industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Do you know anything about that? Are some of these pharmaceuticals derived from petroleum products?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of these pharmaceuticals, they come from byproducts of the petroleum industry. So you get all these oils that we can't really generate energy from. Chemists started just messing around with them, and they found out that they have effects on the body. Well, also, these are all compounds that we just made up so we can patent. So the profit model there is quite lucrative.
So I haven't been to the doctor in many, many years, partially because I've not had any major health issues aside from being a little overstressed, overworked, a little tired, a little sluggish, but also because I've developed such an aversion to the industry as a whole. But that can be problematic because there are times where you need to go to the doctor. So what do you suggest people do? How do they interface with their doctor to make sure that they don't have any issues that they would want to catch before they're too problematic when they're getting bad information or they're being pitched all of these drugs? Like how do you suggest people navigate in the world that we live in today? Because not everybody can, I don't know, read a study like you can. Not everybody has time to go down these rabbit holes on their own. And then and you, like you said, there are these cult-like, fads. You got a guy like Rich Roll, an ultra marathon runner who has a whole personal brand about being a vegan now and is promoting veganism. You have on the flip side of that, carnivore doctors. It just seems to be this massive information. So how do you, I'm assuming now at this point, you personally help people, guide them through figuring out what could work and what is likely not to work. But what do you suggest people do that, are still going to the doctor and getting advice? Like, I was at the doctor a couple of years ago. I got my child and the lady is like really adamant upon us vaccinating her and kind of gave us a shitty attitude. And we're like, no, we're going to do a little bit of research. How do people contend with all of this?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and the system kind of doesn't give you that many options. So it's difficult. You should be aware that with emergencies, the advances that modern medicine has done are quite incredible. Like someone's a lot more likely to survive a car crash now than they did 30 years ago. So definitely that we should give credit where credit is due for that.
Don't break your arm and have a bone sticking out and try to Google some naturopathic way to fix that.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. What I usually recommend to my patients is if you start by just fixing your diet, okay, that will give you, if you're no longer just, drowning in sugar and processed vegetable seed oils and processed foods every day, that will give you more of connection with your own body, that you can start to sense what feels good and what doesn't feel good for you. And so that is the first step in you understanding what works well for your lifestyle. And be curious. I drink this drink every day. How does it make me feel? Maybe I should stop it for a few days and see. I eat this. How does that make me feel? How does working on my desk under artificial light make me feel at night? So all of these things start experimenting with these things. Ideally, it would be helpful to find physicians such as myself to guide you through this in case something comes up. It's not easy to find them everywhere. Okay. So that's the difficult part.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on behavioral meds? So many kids today, I think that, with blue light, sugar, bad food, unhealthy habits, stressful environments, divorced parents, they are getting just inundated with stimulants like Adderall. And what are your thoughts on Adderall or antidepressants, Valium, anti-anxiety pills?
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I mean, a very useful book to look into this. The book is called The Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker. And he goes through basically hundreds of psychiatry studies to look at how these medications were approved and what their actual effect is. So first of all, the theory that there are changes in neurotransmitters in the brain, that's what causes anxiety or depression or ADHD. This theory has never been proven. There's no animal models that show that. There's no studies in humans that show that. The reason they push this agenda is because these medications that they push work on certain receptors. So SSRIs work, or antidepressants work on serotonin receptors. They increase the level of serotonin in your brain. Does it actually help with depression? Okay, a regular psychiatrist will tell you yes. If you read this book, you see that studies that have looked at the long-term effects of these medications, yes, they might cause a benefit where they cause people to get out of a depression episode more quickly. But on the long term, they make the depression last longer. They make it more of a chronic issue. And the reason they do that is because there was never an issue with the patient's brain, as in their serotonin receptors. But all of a sudden, you're exposing them to this medication that's increasing your serotonin level. And so the brain compensates by changing their neurotransmitter level. And so this brain compensation is actually what becomes the disease.
So as you get off of the SSRI, then your baseline level of depression is going to decrease because you've effectively messed with how your brain is calibrated.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's why people end up on these medications. And that's why often this medication is not enough and you have to add another one.
Interesting. Gosh, and there's so many people in the world today, like Jordan Peterson comes to mind, where his daughter was on antidepressants. I don't know how long ago he said he was taking some antidepressants before he went on the strict carnivore diet, but there's so many people who think it's okay. My stepfather was a psychiatrist in the prison system, and he would prescribe pharmaceuticals to these inmates. He'd have drug reps come. I remember him coming home with pens and gadgets. I must have been a teenager, and I had a Viagra pen. I was taking this pen to school. I was like, look, I got this Viagra pen. He would have all of these drug samples. He ended up getting my mother, her sister, and several of our family members onto pharmaceuticals because that's what he thought was the right thing. And I watched multiple family members just progressively get worse and worse and worse. And they were under the idea that they just had a chemical imbalance in their brain. And that just because of their genetics and their chemical imbalance, they needed to be on these prescription pills. And it's killed several of my family members. It was one of the reasons that I developed such an affinity for cannabis and started producing cannabis. At the time, my thought process was it was a fuck you to big pharma every time I bagged a pound and sold it into the free market. But real problem.
Real problem.
Yeah.
They get people hooked. They mess with your neurochemicals in the brain, and it's just a slippery slope.
And do you think that there's a place for any of these behavioral meds in extreme circumstances? I mean, or is this just corruption on the highest level that's caused us to have a whole industry that we don't need?
I mean, so someone comes to me who's depressed, and their lifestyle is they live in their basement and they eat Cheetos all day and they have no job, and that's their life. I will try to address that before I give them medications. Say someone is, or it's rare that someone has their shit together, but they goes through this episode, then maybe they're going through something emotionally, something they need to talk about. Maybe their job is not working out for them. Maybe we should address that. I can see maybe in a minority of cases that you might need it for a short period of time, but understand that there are risks associated with it. There are side effects, and there's a chance that, so say I take this medication for now while I'm fixing my lifestyle. I want to try and come off it. If you're just going to take the medication and not fix the lifestyle, you might not come off it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember being in my mid-teens. My mother was telling me at the time she wanted me to go see a therapist, and I went and talked to this woman a couple of times, and she was like, you're angry, you're depressed, and she wanted me to get on pharmaceuticals. And I had the conscious thought at like 13, 14 years old, like, yeah, I'm angry and depressed because my parents have had this nasty court battle for 9 years or something at the time. And I just wanted my parents to be together. The circumstances were not so favorable. Watching my mother suffer because she's depressed and she's taking these pharmaceutical pills, she's zombied out. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I was living in a cave a couple thousand years ago and we didn't have food, say we didn't, we went hunting, we didn't successfully capture a meal, like you wouldn't just go back to the cave and be bummed out and like pop some pills. Like you would solve the underlying issue. You'd need to go gather resources, or you'd have to get out of an area that wasn't so favorable. So I just thought about it at a young age from witnessing my family members suffer, that like, hey, I actually think that you need to solve the underlying issue, not mask the symptoms of the issue. And I watched my mother commit suicide, basically. She was so depressed, the things that she was doing were not solving the underlying issue. And that really helped to forge a perspective that kept me away from all of that stuff, which I'm pretty grateful for.
A very common theme in pharmaceutical medicine is to tell people that the issue is genetic, the issue is out of your control, you were born with it, it has nothing to do with your lifestyle. That it allows that the solution is only a pill. So nobody asks whether, my diet is affecting this, because no, it's not your diet, it's genetics. That's A. But B, it also takes away the authority from people, and they no longer feel like they are involved in this illness. It depersonalizes it for them.
Yeah,
it's
they're
just
victims of the circumstance.
They're just victims, and the solution is just pills, and it's just depersonalizing, and it's just defeating people.
Yeah, so that's a big problem in the world today, that's for sure. My life changed when I started to take radical responsibility for who I was and what I experienced, and the things that I experienced in my life that weren't so favorable. I kind of reframed my perspective on, like, I'm grateful that these things happened because they're a forcing function for me to learn things I otherwise wouldn't learn or whatever. And that was a very liberating thing for me. Now I still struggle with anxiety about the future, but I don't have any regrets or remorseful feelings about the past. And I also find that if I take responsibility for circumstances that I may not be directly responsible for, the faster I do that, the sooner I can eliminate the resistance around the frustration or whatever dealing with this circumstance, and be in a cognitive place to act more effectively quicker. Anyways, so I am curious, you're Saifedean's brother.
Yes, sir.
So you are a Bitcoiner, I would assume.
Yes.
Yes. And do you think that the discovery of Bitcoin and a finite, incorruptible monetary instrument, how does it affect the medical industry and the corruption that we've seen in the medical industry, the misinformation, the skewed studies, the profit motives? You see all that changing? Is it something that's going to happen naturally because we have this unchangeable monetary protocol? Do you think there's a call to action, things people need to be doing?
I mean, I think the most important first step is people that are understanding Bitcoin are understanding that we are kind of live in a corrupt world. So that's forcing them to ask questions. And one of the questions they're asking is this medical field also corrupt? That's the first step. How Bitcoin itself helps with this, I think, is, first of all, there have been physicians that have spoken out against, modern medicine. And what tends to happen with them is they tend to get their funds confiscated. They have their bank accounts shut down. So once we have Bitcoin, we have a peer-to-peer way of payment that you don't have to rely on any third parties. And so if you like what this guy is saying, you can send them money directly without a third party getting involved. So that's an important first step. A second very important thing, part of the issues with modern medicine in the US is a lot of like small clinics, a lot of physician groups, they are being taken over by very big like hospital networks, etc. And the reason that's happening is because these big companies have access to cheap credit. So the bigger you are, the easier it is for you to get loans. The problem with that is all these doctors that have good intentions end up spending all their time working on paperwork for these big corporations and trying to meet deadlines and trying to make more money for these companies rather than just working with their patients directly. So this giantification of medicine happens because we live in a world ruled by inflation, where we're always trying to get cheap credit to run away from inflation. So that's another way that Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. It seems that the business strategy in the world under this Keynesian economic model is to figure out how to become the proverbial biggest fish or to sell your business to a bigger fish. And so it does seem to affect how people think about running their business if they're trying to figure out how to exit their position and sell to a larger corporation. And another thing that I think a lot about is we don't have a free market capitalistic society if we have this, Marxist money system that's centrally controlled. The recipients of the newly minted currency have an advantage in the marketplace over the people who don't receive that fiat subsidy, I guess you could say. That, and if the natural state of a free market is deflationary, then nobody's P&L is safe. And so you're incentivizing pharmaceutical companies and businesses of all sorts to figure out how to protect their profitable sector in the marketplace. And so I like to think that Bitcoin will force change in that it is the first global free market that we have ever had. And it doesn't matter who you are, who you know, you're not going to get to be able to print yourself some Bitcoin or receive some freely printed Bitcoin. And, with that, I also think a lot about like Elon Musk and Neuralink and patent law. And I feel like if everything was open source, including like, patents for insulin, like we wouldn't have so much of this issue. The stuff that people need would become cheap because you'd be able to produce a bunch of it if there's a profit to do so. As supply satiates demand, the value of that good or service is going to decrease. And so I feel like if we could get rid of patent law and closed source software, like that would have a monumental impact. What do you think about all of that? Are there any holes or, am I missing some understandings in that?
Patents don't make sense. In order to get a patent, pharmaceutical companies pay so much money in order to get a patent. So they end up having to, in order to reap the profit, they have to make this drug so expensive, and they have to, create a monopoly on this medication, etc. If this medication is helpful, just go and sell it in the market. Have it be available for everyone. And if you are doing a good job, people are going to come to it and buy it. Problem is that the medication is not helping people.
Yeah.
This is, a lot of people try and, philosophize what's the problem with healthcare. Why are hospital networks not efficient? Why are, doctors so burnt out? The fundamental issue is that whatever you're doing is not helping people get better.
Yeah, a patient cured is a customer lost.
Exactly. And you are not helping people get better, so that's why the system is so overworked. That's why the system is so overburdened. That's why.
Yeah, and I think about a Bitcoin treasury strategy. If your balance sheet is crushing it, then you're less P&L dependent. And I think, at least for me and most people in the world, they don't like grinding endlessly. It's like a sailor quote comes to mind. The road to serfdom is working infinitely harder for a currency growing infinitely weaker. And that seems to just be a very prevalent problem. Most people are unaware of it, that they're continuing to work and work and work and try to set themselves up so they don't have to do that anymore. But all of the assets that they're holding are defective or leaking energy. And it just corrupts the thought process. It also creates this like nihilistic, depressed vibe. I personally have dealt with that a lot over the years, where it's just like, it just feels like a constant grind. And the discovery of Bitcoin has really revitalized my hope and enthusiasm around the world.
That's why we are doing this.
Yes. When did you discover Bitcoin?
It was actually around the same time my brother started writing the Bitcoin standard. So he kind of went deep into the Bitcoin rabbit hole when I was just started medical school. So we kind of went through it together, and it was fascinating to kind of understand how this all ties back to the money.
Yeah. Are you writing a book?
Well, I'm writing, it's going to come out hopefully soon, Fiat Medicine. It's more about like the history of medicine. How did we get to the point that we are here? And also some of like the biggest fiat lies that we need people to know the truth about.
Yeah.
One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin upends everything that state-sponsored schools teach us about money. For those who get the importance of Bitcoin, it is important that we have a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have pioneered the concept of roundups, which converts your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your credit or debit cards, and your usual purchases are rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats on every purchase without even thinking about it. Coinbits also provides a terrific self-custody experience. Connect a hardware wallet for automatic withdrawals into cold storage to minimize your risk and stay sovereign over your Bitcoin. My favorite Coinbits feature is Coinbits Plus, which gives you the best exchange rate on Bitcoin. It even gives you real-time feedback on how well you are doing on your savings plan. With Coinbits Plus, power users can save more money to buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer cash and Bitcoin payments, target orders, price alerts, and more means Coinbits can help you do almost anything you need to do with Bitcoin. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that is Coinbits, BITS.app/breedlove.
So you're running a private practice, or what are you doing currently?
Yeah, so I have my own online consulting service where I see people fully online, and it's kind of a way people can escape the matrix. So if you have doctors that are telling you to take this pill and you have concerns about it, if you have lab work that you don't like what your traditional doctor is telling you about them, if you have a health issue that traditional doctors have not been helping you with, I've been helping people to get better that way.
How long have you been doing that?
It's been a couple of years, but over the last 6 months, I've kind of dedicated more energy to it, and hopefully it's going to be my full-time job soon.
And when you got your doctorate or finished your residency, did you go work at a hospital or another practice?
I still work in a hospital.
Okay.
now. I work as something called a hospitalist, which is a primary care physician for patients while they're in the hospital. So it's a little bit, my job is just to get them better acutely, to get them out of the hospital. Okay.
Yeah. You're like a double agent.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do a double agent if I was like in a clinic, because then I can't just give them pills and pretend that the problem is over. But I can still get them out of the hospital, and then,
Yeah, I think about hospitals kind of like mechanics at this point. Like if I have a major issue, or broken arm, like I was use that example earlier, then I'm going to have to go to the doctor. But aside from that, I've really tried to just figure out how to live a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. There's thousands and thousands of ways to heal people naturally, and we've lost all of that knowledge, unfortunately. It's still, some practitioners have, found out how to teach themselves these things, and that's what we are trying to rediscover. And hopefully with, once we are on a hard money standard, these traditional ways of healing will come back again.
Yeah, and I asked ChatGPT questions, and I tried to Google things over the years and watch YouTube videos. Several of the YouTube videos that I've discovered in like 2013, 14, and 15, they've been removed. How much of an issue is that? People finding good information. I would imagine some of the information that you discovered in, 10 years ago are probably not something that ChatGPT is going to recommend.
Yeah, it's that's going to be the key now, is there's going to be a lot of information, but for you to try and figure out if this information is from a reliable source. ChatGPT is incredibly useful. I use it for research, but if you just ask it blindly, what do you think of X? It's going to give you the answer that, the pharmaceutical industry wants you to answer. So it's going to look at the first top 10 medical websites. And these are Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Healthline. They're all pharmaceutical medicine heavy, okay? More and more people are just, because this thing is so smart, they're relying all their ability to, categorize whether this is good or bad to ChatGPT. And that's going to be a problem in the future. The way I ask ChatGPT is, I know a few researchers, a few doctors that think similar to what I do. So if I have a question about something, I asked her, what does Dr. Jack Kruse think of this?
Interesting. I like that.
And then at the end, it would tell me, well, Jack Kruse is a conspiracy theorist. And
yeah.
But I'm like, okay, but that's not your business to tell me. Just summarize what he tells me. So that can be useful, but you just have to be careful what, where is it basing its information from? I think this is my own suspicion is, at this point, it's going to be able to get you Jack Kruse's opinion. But I think once we're even more dependent on it, when you're somehow communicating with it all the time and stuff, it's not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be maybe the future that we should be concerned about.
Yes, I could see that unfolding. I feel like it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. I like to hold an optimistic perspective, but I do have concerns about the near term. What about, so you do breath work. What kind of breath work do you do?
Yeah, so I did the Wim Hof breathing for a long time. It's very helpful for a lot of people who have like low energy in the morning, have some anxiety, some depression. It's kind of like a way to power up your nervous system and get you up and going. The way to think about the breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system, which is out of your control, your automatic nervous system that you can control physically.
Interesting.
So through your breath, you can control the level of stress in your system, in your nervous system. That's why it's so powerful.
And so you did do the Wim Hof method.
Wim Hof is very good. A little bit more involved one that requires a little bit of training to get to it. It's called Buteyko, Buteyko. It'll take you maybe 2 to 3 weeks to figure out, to get to the level where it's working for you. And the main way it works is you try and reduce your breathing. You go to episodes like you do like 12 minutes of controlled where you're slowing your breathing.
And what's the advantage to doing breath work? Is it oxygenating your blood? Is it resetting your nervous system, taking you out of like a sympathetic state?
So very good question. We tend to, as a society, to overbreathe. We're breathing too much. The reason we do that is we are in a stressful environment. Stress from life, from light, from EMFs, from food. We are stressed, so we tend to overbreathe. What overbreathing does is you overbreathe when you're scared, when you're cold. That's your sympathetic or stress system. So your body associates overbreathing with anxiety, with high levels of stress. On the other hand, breathing slower goes into the parasympathetic or the calming nervous system. So that gives you kind of like a stability. You're calmer. You're still able to rise up your nervous system if you need to, but your baseline is calmer.
That makes sense.
And then at a cellular level, what the Buteyko does is that it forces you to hold your breath for long periods. And when you do that, you are actually raising your carbon dioxide levels. You would think that carbon dioxide is bad. Well, you're only raising it a very small amount. But this difference, what it actually does in your cells, is that it makes your cells more efficient in using the oxygen that you have.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So this is something Buteyko discovered a long time ago. He's a Russian scientist, and he saw that all of his patients tend to overbreathe. And he discovered just through trial and error this breathing exercise. And like he would help people with asthma. He would treat asthma just through these exercises. So it's pretty powerful.
Yes. I did breath work once. I did like an hour-long session where I was breathing, I believe it was through the mouth, in and out basically, and this practitioner had some music going. It was psychedelic. It was quite incredible. My whole body started tingling. Like I started to have visuals like I was on some psychedelic drug. It was pretty wild. And my wife does it often. She meditates and she does, breath work. A lot of times I got a 3-year-old running around that's kind of a handful, healthy, not vaccinated, not eating crappy food, full of energy, intelligent. And so it can be kind of draining on my wife. And so we have a babysitter come by a couple times a week so that she can go meditate and do breath work.
Amazing.
And so it seems to be something that's been very impactful for her. I, on the flip side of that, don't do any of that, even though I know I should be doing breath work and meditating.
It's kind of like Buteyko is a little bit of an involved exercise. I tell people it's kind of like picking up a new hobby. It'll take you maybe 20 minutes a day, but it's kind of cool and you try and figure it out and it'll help your exercise ability. It'll help your levels of stress, etc.
What do you think about ice baths?
Very good. I mean, Wim Hof did a very good job of introducing people to cold exposure. Dr. Jack Kruse is also a big fan. At a cellular level, cold exposure allows you to release photons of light from your own cells.
Really?
From your own mitochondria, yes.
How is that possible?
It's pretty incredible what the body is capable of. We just try to think of it as molecules and chemicals and sodium and potassium, but it's light, it's energy, and it's able to sublimate the energy of the cold into generating light.
That's incredible.
Okay, and that helps with sort of cleaning up things in the mitochondria, so the cold exposure does. I find it's very helpful for people who live in cold places, especially in the winter. Because in the winter, there's not that much sun. You kind of don't have the natural light coming from the sun. A way to kind of get your body charged up is to get cold exposure. And it's kind of good for your body because it understands, the climate that you're in and adjusts your metabolism, etc., according to where you're at that point. For a lot of people, it's very helpful. For some people, it can be a bit too much for them. Like if they're already under a lot of stress, cold can be an extra stress on them. So I don't recommend it for everyone, but for a lot of people, it can be very helpful.
And if you live in a warmer climate, it's less impactful or less necessary?
If you live in a warm climate, ideally you should be getting sun every day. So you don't need the cold. If you live in a cold environment, it's a lot more relevant because you need
That makes sense. And on the flip side, what about saunas and dry heat versus infrared? Dr. Rhonda Patrick, I've listened to her talk about saunas, and Andrew Huberman. I mean, it's like a significant reduction in like all-cause morbidity for people who use saunas often.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the research about it. What I can tell you is I've read a lot. It helps with like detoxing things. A lot of people that have some toxic burden in their body, it helps them get that out. So I do it. I feel good on it. I don't know what the research says about it.
Okay. Do you meditate?
So this Buteyko, once you get into it, it starts to become sort of, you also incorporate meditation into it. So I do, yes.
Are you familiar with Bruce Lipton in the book Biology of Belief?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah, it's the idea that our beliefs have a literal impact on our physiology on a cellular level. And epigenetics, like phenotypic expression, like if I took an exact genetic replication of myself and put myself into a completely different environment with different environmental factors, stressors, nutrition, and also belief sets, that there's going to be a different phenotypic expression based upon that. One of the things that I've really tried to do personally is make sure that I'm thinking positive things. And like, I don't know, as I'm saying this, Joe Dispenza comes to mind, and I don't know if this is true, but his story is apparently he broke his back and he laid in a bed in the hospital and visualized for months on end his back healing. And he goes around the world, podcasts, doing seminars, and talking about how he healed his back through thinking through that. I find that to be very fascinating.
I mean, if you travel back 1,000 years and you ask someone from 1,000 years to look at our society currently, especially in the West, the first thing they're gonna question is, how are you guys so materialistic? Where is your belief in the power of the mind, the power of spirit, the power of God, whatever you want to call it? Societies have always believed in that stuff because it does play a role, whether you like it or not. It's not just chemicals. It's not just receptors. It's not just studies. There are things more than that, and it's kind of like a method of control to dumb people down, where you're only thinking at a surface, molecular, materialistic level.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there's a very special place called the Farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000-acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you. If you're a Bitcoiner, you need the Orange Pill app. It's where you can connect with other sovereign individuals locally and globally. It's great for when you travel, to meet local Bitcoiners, to go to Bitcoin meetups, and to find local merchants that accept sats. No distractions, no noise, just real Bitcoiners. So download the Orange Pill app today and find your local Bitcoin tribe.
All right. Kind of jumping all over the place here, but I just have all these random questions about health and wellness. And another one that's getting a lot of attention these days is nicotine. You have any thoughts on nicotine?
Yeah, so nicotine is a stimulant. It works on the body on nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. These receptors they drive inflammation in the body. So nicotine can act as an anti-inflammatory agent in certain doses. It also, if you want to look at it from a mitochondrial point of view, it can act as a small stressor to mitochondria, and it's sort of like inducing a hormetic response where the mitochondria are stressed and they come back more powerful after. So the way to think about it is, I don't think it's a thing that you do every day or all day. It's good in small quantities, infrequently, and at small doses. There's a lot of talk online, these random videos popping up showing us that it treats everything. I still haven't seen that much convincing evidence of that. And it's so that happens that this happens at the same time that all these tobacco shops are heavily marketing the pouches. So it's no coincidence. In small amounts, it can be helpful in treating colds, maybe. There are studies showing it's helpful for long COVID because COVID affects acetylcholine receptors. But I would worry about people getting hooked on it.
Mm-hmm. And what are you aware of what the issues are if you take too much of it? Because it's easy with the pouches. Like you could rip through 60 milligrams in a day easily or more.
You create dependence where it's no longer working for you, so you need more of a dose. And so eventually you're taking a lot. In and of its own, it's not bad, but you're just creating dependence and you're using high quantities. The pouches on themselves, you have to be careful with what the ingredients are in them, because if you're using it all day, then that stuff is affecting your gum, and there's research showing that it affects your microbiome in the mouth. So that's something to be careful of. And the benefits that happen to the mitochondria only happen if you take it infrequently. So don't be thinking that if I do it every day, I'm helping my mitochondria.
Interesting.
Eventually, if you're taking it in high doses every day, it might start becoming an actual stressor to the mitochondria.
So if you do it infrequently, in my experience with nicotine, if I haven't used it in a while, I get really woozy. Do you know what causes that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it affects, the acetylcholine affects balance centers in the brain. So
yeah, I remember the first time I must have been 17 or 18 years old. I ditched class with a couple buddies of mine that I would smoke some weed with, and we didn't have any weed, and my friends smoked Newport cigarettes.
Wow.
And I remember smoking that cigarette, and I literally was like, dizzy, nauseous, thinking to myself, like, how could you ever get addicted to this? A few weeks later, we're doing it again. A couple of weeks later again. Before you know it, I was like, dang, I want a cigarette. It was wild how that unfolded.
When it comes from cigarettes, there's also sodium monoxide that's coming. So that kind of like, you're not getting oxygen to your brain. So that can cause you to get dizzy. It's helpful to point out to people who do smoke that a lot of the issues with smoking are, people have smoked for a very long time. The issues that we've been having with smoking are only maybe over the last 100 years. A lot of it is the pesticides that they put on the tobacco and the chemicals that they use in the paper and the filters of the tobacco. So, Native Americans used to smoke a lot of tobacco and they were fine. So if you're able to find an organic source of tobacco, it helps a lot. And yes, you're not getting a lot of the carcinogenic compounds that they're spraying the crop with.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about creatine? Do you know much about creatine? That's getting a lot of attention recently. I saw a Paul Saladino video recently. He's walking out of a supermarket or a gas station with a pouch of Zens, talking about basically, you can get addicted to this stuff. There's microplastics in the little pouch that they put it in. If you want cognitive enhancement, use creatine. Of course, he's selling a creatine product. So, but I'm a little not clear on that one. What do you know about creatine?
Yeah, it's getting all this hype in the market, and it tends to go with cycles like this. Every few years, all of a sudden, everyone hears about creatine. The standardized medicine view about it is that it enhances energy production in the cell. It's been shown to increase muscle mass, and it improves cognitive function. And there are studies up to 5 years that show that it's not harmful to the liver or the kidneys. So that's the good part about it. Gym bros like it because it holds water muscle, helps them, get a bigger pump. That's the positive side. The concerns are a little bit more theoretical, and this I've read from Dr. Jack Kruse's work. Creatine is high in deuterium. Do you know what deuterium is?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Deuterium?
Deuterium, yeah.
Okay.
So deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. So hydrogen is a metal, and it has different types of hydrogen have different number of neutrons. Neutrons, you can have more of them because they don't have a charge. So you can have an extra neutron. It doesn't really affect the function of the metal per se. If you get if you change electrons in an ion, it changes a lot of its structure, or you change protons. But a neutron is less subtle difference. Deuterium is a heavier form of hydrogen. Okay. Deuterium, your mitochondria don't run as efficiently as normal hydrogen. Okay. So if you're eating a lot of food that's high in deuterium, it can cause your mitochondria to get kind of sluggish.
What foods would be high in deuterium?
So deuterium is high in things that grow in the tropics. So generally carbohydrates, sugars, and sweet fruits are high in deuterium.
Would it be considered a heavy metal?
It's not a heavy metal. No, it's you can think of it as kind of something like that, how it does to the body, but it's just your body uses hydrogen so much in the water that it uses. This kind of makes the overall mechanism less efficient.
Okay.
So a lot of Dr. Jack Kruse, what he says, the issue with high carb diet is the issue comes mostly in people that live away from the tropics. Because the further you are from the tropics, the less there is deuterium in the foods that you eat. And so you shouldn't be eating high deuterium foods that are coming from the tropics.
That makes sense.
Okay, so if you live in Boston and you're eating a mango that grows in Mexico, that mango is high in deuterium. And if you eat it in December, your body is not going to process it very well.
And that would be different if you ate it in December in Mexico where it's 80 degrees and you're getting a bunch of sunlight.
Exactly, because the sunlight allows you to handle deuterium better.
And on that note, what about people who live in tropical regions and are eating a ton of grass-fed beef that's shipped in from a different part of the world? I think that's probably not ideal either.
It's not as bad as the other way around.
Okay.
But also, if you listen to your body a little bit more, if you listen to your signals a little bit more, less in a less biased way, you'll see that if you live in a hotter climate, it'll be harder for you to be on a very heavy meat diet. Okay. It's just, that's how your metabolism works. You'll tend to be craving sugary fruits a little bit more. So, I would listen to that hunch, but, don't overdo it.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, creatine is high in deuterium. And so you are getting high doses of deuterium every day. And that can also make your metabolism a little bit more sluggish.
So that's something to watch out for with the creatine. So
yeah,
you should probably cycle on and off of it.
Possibly. There's no real studies showing what does this deuterium from creatine do. But we know that deuterium is not good for your mitochondria.
Okay.
One final thought, and this is also theoretical. The way creatine works is that it works on this phosphocreatine pathway in the cell. This pathway is kind of like an emergency, turbo button, basically. It works very quickly and gives you a burst of energy very quickly. So it's like made for explosive energy. You sprint real quick. You want to lift something very heavy. You do a very heavy deadlift. That's when that system is activated. If you're taking a lot of creatine, perhaps you are overwhelming that system and you're not using the normal pathways of energy production as well.
So could it create some sort of physiological dependency?
And it could also mask that you have issues in the way your mitochondria generate energy. So if you're dependent on the creatine to feel better, that's an issue that you should be handling,
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's also theoretical. There are no really studies looking at this.
And so speaking of energy, what kind of physical activity do you do and you think is ideal? You got some people that are bodybuilders that are lifting really heavy. On the other end of the spectrum, you got people that are marathon runners. And in between, you can say you got the sedentary people who aren't doing anything. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, it's this topic is a little bit charged because a lot of people have, interest, are very attached to the way they work out. So I'll be careful. What's important to point out is being heavy and jacked and muscular isn't guaranteed that you're going to live long. Okay. In fact, what Jack Kruse argues is that your body has a finite number of mitochondria. And most of us these days die from heart and nervous system issues. So if you are putting all that mitochondria into building muscle, you're putting less of it into protecting your heart and nervous system. So that might actually make you more susceptible to dying from these things. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. People that live till 100, there are studies on these centenarians and stuff. They're not all jacked. They tend to have some muscle tissue, and they're not either too buff or too lean. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind with overdoing it in the gym. On the other extreme, the studies that show that having low muscle mass in an elderly is a risk factor for just overall disease and frailty and falls and early death even. But we're talking about people that, older people that have no muscle mass, It doesn't mean that you have to be completely a gym buff. It means that even as an elderly, you need to be able to carry things, you need to be able to walk. And if you're not doing these things regularly, all of a sudden you're old and you can't do them. So that's why movement is important. Some sort of resistance training once a week, I think, is a minimal. Maybe optimized for things that are more like functional exercises, like pull-ups, push-ups, squats. These tend to activate multiple muscle groups, so you won't be overworking one muscle versus another muscle group, etc. So that sort of functional exercise is good. With regards to cardio, I mean, this is like a topic that all the kind of mainstream influencers love to brag about, VO2 and your ability to how much cardio you can do. But if you actually look at studies, marathon runners don't live that long. Okay, marathon runners tend to have a lot of issues with their hearts, and the reason is prolonged moderate intensity exercise tend to actually cause stress on the heart and causes remodeling in the heart. Okay, so the people that go jogging for like an hour every day, that's not very good. Okay, it's putting strain on your knees. It's elevating your cortisol level, your stress hormone, for a prolonged period of times, and it could be detrimental to your heart. If you want to do some cardio, best form is to do like explosive things. So maybe like sprint, some fast swimming is good, some fast biking. But again, doing that every day, your muscles need some time to recover. So I don't recommend exercise every day. What you should be doing every day is you should be at least taking a 30-minute walk. That counts as an exercise. And it's the most natural thing our ancestors did. Our ancestors weren't jogging for like hours. What they would do is that they see some prey and they would just sprint after it. Or if some animal is chasing them, they would run away from it. So that's a more natural way of doing exercise.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And, people who resistant train seem to have better hormone balance, and marathon runners seem to, I think it's my understanding that if you're a marathon runner, you're wreaking havoc on your testosterone.
Mm-hmm. Because all of your energy is going into synthesizing cortisol, the stress hormone that keeps you going on this run, rather than making hormones like estrogen, like testosterone. A lot of like those marathon runners, the women, they don't get their periods, and same with like long distance runners.
Yeah, and so we were talking about this off camera. Speaking of testosterone, you brought up semen retention. That's something that I have messed around with over the years, and I find that if I retain my semen for extended periods of time, my energy levels go through the roof. Cognitive function seems to be enhanced. It's a pretty powerful thing. And I think there's also like a control or discipline element to it as well. It's enjoyable to ejaculate and have that release. I think it's Montauk Chia. I could be wrong about that. He wrote a couple books about this, and there's like a finite amount of times you can release your seed. You're depleting yourself. Tell me a little bit about semen retention.
Yeah, so it's a very important topic that I think, there's a lot of young men out there that are really struggling. And one of the ways that they can help themselves is through fixing this. The reason they are struggling is because they're depleting all their energy. And the reason is in traditional Chinese medicine, they say that a drop of semen requires 4 drops of blood to make. So all the nutrients, like you require the nutrients of 4 blood drops just to make 1 blood of semen. So it's expensive for your body to make. Your body wasn't designed for the semen to be ejaculated every day, okay? It's meant for something of a higher purpose, for procreation, okay? So if you are doing it every day or every couple of days, you are wasting a lot of your energy that should be going into other ways into your body, into energy to work out, energy to be smart, energy to be efficient. You're wasting all of this by getting rid of your seed. Some ways to do it is there's some breathing exercise. I'm not going to go into details of how it's done. It's not appropriate for a podcast. Breathing exercises of how you can get to the point where you are on the verge, but you don't ejaculate. And so you're able to hold it in more, okay? This can allow you to go on for a month, 2 months, 3 months without ejaculating. And you'll see that your energy...
While still having sex.
You can do that too.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is going to... it's going to increase the quality of sperm that you have, because they say that the longer the sperm lives, that the higher quality it is. So if you're holding on to sperm, the ones that die off are the weaker ones. The ones that live on for a while are the ones that are likely to make better progeny. So that's one thing. And also your energy levels are just going to be much higher, and you're going to be quite connected on a spiritual level as well. And women are going to find you a lot more attractive if you do that.
Yeah, and then the prolactin. After you ejaculate, your body it dumps prolactin, which makes you docile. And
Yes. I mean, if you're doing it with a partner and with the goal of procreating, it's great. But if you're just doing it to porn, definitely not very good. And I think it's one of the main reasons why a lot of young men are struggling these days.
Big time, yes. I think of I remember I was in my teens, and my father and my brothers and I went to see something about Mary, and his buddy is telling him, "Hey, you're about to go out on this date with a loaded gun. You can't go out with a loaded gun. You need to jerk off, man." And he does, and he shoots himself in the ear. Right? It's like I think about that literally every single time I get into the discussion of ejaculation and porn. Like we're being heavily encouraged societally to basically squander that male essence and that life force. I think that there's, the attack on masculinity, docile men, there's all these links that kind of seem to stem from the monetary system and the proverbial overlords. But yeah, I think about that scene. I remember being my dad was laughing so hard. I never think I've heard him laugh so hard as when we were watching that movie. But yeah, you want to have a loaded gun. You want to be ready to go.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
It can, after a long period of time, you kind of need a release. So it's going to be helpful for you because it's also going to make you more motivated to find a partner to find that release.
Totally.
So think about it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine that, porn and excessive ejaculation are what's causing so many young men to not have girlfriends. They're not motivated. They're getting the reward of finding a girlfriend and having sex without actually doing so. And I think that can wreak havoc in all sorts of areas of their life. Another one, I know we've been bouncing all over the place here, but we also talked about this for a second off camera, Bluetooth and headphones. You're quite adverse to wearing Bluetooth headphones.
Yes. As I discussed previously, our cells are surrounded by this fourth phase of water, easy water. This water, its structure is destroyed by exposure to EMF, okay? It loses its ability to charge separate, so it becomes just like the water that you drink. It stops becoming like the semi-solid structure. Also, EMF exposure has been shown to affect calcium channels in our cells. So calcium is a very important ion in our body. The way the body works is that it maintains a very strict balance between what's inside and what's outside the body. If you upset that balance, then all the currents start going haywire. You need the calcium outside to be less than inside for certain functions. The EMF exposure to our cells causes calcium to sneak into our cells, and this causes these currents to form, and these currents cause free radicals to form, and that can damage our cells and damage our DNA. So that's the mechanism by which EMF is harmful to us. There's a ton of research showing links between increased cell phone exposure and things like tinnitus or ringing in the ear, things like brain cancer, things like leukemia. So the studies are out there linking artificial EMF exposure to these conditions. It's not like there's no research about it. It is, however, heavily silenced by big tech industry because it really affects their motives. Bluetooth headphones are especially problematic because they are so close to your head, and actually they communicate with each other. So this one, the signal, they rely on each other's signals in order to function properly. So you're literally emitting signals through your brain to the other headphone.
Oh gosh, that's terrible. They're so convenient though.
They are convenient.
Oh my gosh.
It is unfortunate. Wired headphones are better if you need to. No headphones is of course better than all of this. There are on Amazon you can find something called air tubes, where the tubes have air in them. So that means that there's less EMF coming from your device also into your ears. So these are helpful, but it's definitely something I do not recommend.
Do you think that the damage to the DNA or on a cellular level is reversible?
Everything is reversible with enough sun exposure. If you stop the exposure, you can.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you're speaking out about all of these things that most doctors aren't. Why are other doctors not coming to the light and taking the proverbial red pill and, figuring this stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, and this question has haunted me for a very long time because I've kind of tried to talk to my fellow doctors about things, and I'm met with heavy criticism and being called a quack, etc. that I've stopped. And I think the reason is it could be several things, but I think the main reason is getting into medicine is very, very difficult. So in undergrad, you have to be top of your class. You have to have a near perfect GPA. You have to do very well at the MCAT, like the medical school entrance exam. All of this, it kind of selects for, you have to be very, very good at following commands. You have to be very good at, not thinking outside the box, not taking risks, just sitting down and studying. So the system kind of selects for people that just want to be told what to do.
And they can regurgitate information really well. They're being taught what to think and not how to think.
100%. And so if a lot of people that were more entrepreneurial or liked to think a little bit against the mainstream, they wouldn't have made it through to become doctors. They would have discovered that we have another career path that's more effective. I don't want to be told what to do so much. And so all the doctors, most of the doctors I've worked with, they don't have bad intentions. They just go into the system wanting to help people. Like me, they're shocked. We're not helping anyone. And this is something they've worked so hard to get into medical school for. It kind of creates this cognitive dissonance where, oh crap, do I admit that everything I've worked for is a farce, or what do I do? So a lot of them go through this difficult period, either in medical school or residency. And how most of them come out of it is they say, well, it's not up to me to kind of figure out why the system is broken. I just want to make as much money as I can to support my family. And this, of course, happens because, they're all burdened with a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans. So I don't blame them. It's a natural way of how things progress, how they've been trained, and what the system expects out of them.
Yes, I can see the cognitive dissonance. I find that the people that are the most educated are typically the ones that struggle to grok Bitcoin. When all the building blocks that make up the macro thesis are indisputable independently, but when you put them all together, it can just break the brain. That, and when people's well-being is hinging upon them to believe certain things, it can make it very challenging to get over that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. There have been more doctors understanding these things, but slowly.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other fun topics, rabbit holes, suggestions?
I can't think of any.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been fun. I mean, I could sit here and ask you questions for hours and hours on end. Where can people find you? You do Zoom consulting. How do people find you?
Yes, so I'm on AmmousMD.com. You can also find me on Twitter at AmmousMD and on Instagram. I'm most active on Twitter, and I'm happy. You can reach me by email. I'm happy to answer people's questions or talk to them on Zoom.
Perfect. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for making the trip. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much, Eric. Enjoyed it as well.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.